If you find yourself getting annoyed, upset, frustrated, maybe getting into one too many arguments or turbulent relationships, you may have a difficulty in setting boundaries, maintaining boundaries, and understanding your own personal limits. Boundaries are how we define spaces, outline limits, and separate something from something else. Whether it's a fence, a wall, a velvet rope, or even a sign, boundaries symbolize possession and control, creating a degree of distance and security. These physical boundaries establish ownership and privacy, allowing you to feel safe and secure in your own environment. But boundaries are not only external structures, they also exist within you on a conscious and unconscious level. These internal boundaries act as emotional regulators, defining your level of comfort or discomfort, determining what is acceptable or unacceptable, setting your limits in any given interaction. Your boundaries also contribute to your sense of identity and self-awareness, defining your personal space and individuality. Both internal and external boundaries are dynamic and can change over time. They may be flexible or rigid, permeable or impermeable, depending on various factors. While some areas in your life may be off limits to certain people, they may be open to others. Boundaries are not just about separation, they are also about familiarity, intimacy, and comfort. By understanding the importance of boundaries, you are better able to navigate your own thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Healthy boundaries empower you to assert your own needs while respecting the needs of others, creating a harmonious balance between connection and disconnection. Boundaries are one of those fundamental things that we need to get right to achieve stability and balance in our lives. I'm Daniel, and with over 10 years of experience in the mental health field and a lifelong student of the unconscious mind, here's a deeper perspective. Boundaries with others. The parameters you set for yourself and others can vary depending on the nature of your relationship. Your boundaries with a co-worker differ compared to a romantic partner, a family member, or a friend. Interpersonal boundaries are the psychological and emotional borders you establish in your relationship with people. These boundaries dictate how you interact with people and set the tone for how you allow others to treat you and how you treat them. You could describe boundaries within family relationships like the boundary between the sand and the sea on the beach, something more fluid and flexible. Whereas you might compare a relationship with a stranger or someone that you don't know very well to a brick wall, something more imposing, allowing for minimal, if any, permeability. Whether it's someone you just met or someone that you have known your whole life, you decide how much emotional real estate you're willing to give. Unhealthy boundaries, either too rigid or too lax, can lead to dysfunctional relationships marked by disrespect or overdependency. To maintain healthy boundaries, an environment of respect and acceptance must be mutually created. This allows each person to feel that their boundaries will be acknowledged. But this is not always the case. When boundaries are breached, it's important for you to reflect on why a boundary may have been ruptured, especially if it's a frequent occurrence. Often boundaries are overstepped when one person crosses the parameters of the relationship into interpersonal areas that are off limits, either by doing or saying something that violates another's emotional or physical space. For example, your neighbor feels the need to give you advice about how you raise your children or live your life, and it just makes you feel judged and criticized. Or at work, a colleague publicly asks you personal questions about your relationship or financial situation, making you feel exposed. It could be the culture in your organization that subtly pressures you to take on more work, or a jealous and controlling partner who constantly needs to know your whereabouts. Of course, no one wants to be in these situations, but it's worth asking yourself if in some way you might have contributed to it, or why might have you allowed it to happen without realizing it. It's important that you reflect on this, because how you set and maintain your boundaries can happen on an unconscious level. When you don't get the right balance of distance and closeness, you could be opening the door to unhealthy relationships, toxic dynamics, and unwanted situations. On the flip side, you also run the risk of missing out on potentially meaningful connections and opportunities by being too distant or too rigid in your boundaries. Whether it's unconsciously maintaining emotional distance to not get hurt, or craving connection to make up for a lack of intimacy, healthier boundaries must be established for positive interactions. However, there's more to healthy boundaries than just mutual respect and healthy relationships. Let's go deeper. Overlapping boundaries. Your mind is a complex place filled with conflicting thoughts and emotions that collide and overlap, kind of like a hyperlink. Let me explain. One thought or experience often leads to another related one. In the same way, your experiences in the present are deeply linked to how you perceive the past and anticipate the future. Something as small as a casual conversation might suddenly turn heated if it triggers an unconscious memory or emotion. For example, a discussion about financial planning with your partner might suddenly turn sour due to unconscious anxiety about your financial security. You could call this an unconscious hyperlink, connecting financial planning with a negative thought or feeling, maybe even stemming as far back as childhood. Maybe a colleague's innocent comment about your caseload might make you defensive due to a hidden feeling of inadequacy. In this case, it's not just that your colleague actually crossed a boundary, even if it feels that way. Rather, the comment that they made touched a nerve. In other words, a kind of mental hyperlink connecting your performance at work to a restricted area in your mind where there are deep feelings of insecurity. Even your projections of the future can carry extremely powerful unconscious connections. Like a rejection letter from university might cause a disproportionate negative reaction because not getting into the university of your dreams links to so much pain and fear below the surface. Interestingly, this overlapping boundary is something that can also be seen in the client-therapist relationship. It's called transference and countertransference. This is a complex phenomenon that can significantly influence the therapeutic process. Transference occurs when the client projects their past feelings, attitudes, or experiences, often from childhood, onto their therapist. They might begin to relate to the therapist as they would a significant other in their lives, such as a partner or parent, which significantly alters the dynamics in therapy. Countertransference, however, involves the therapist's own emotional entanglement with the client. This is where the therapist's personal feelings and unresolved issues become projected onto the client, potentially disrupting the therapeutic process. Although transference and countertransference, when recognized and managed appropriately, can actually enhance the therapeutic process, both must be skillfully navigated, allowing for an exploration of the client's inner world for more profound insights. Recognizing and managing boundaries in all types of relationships can be a difficult and delicate task, but it is extremely important. This adds an interesting dynamic to the subject of boundaries and deepens things even more. As well as having boundaries with other people, we must also be aware of the boundaries we've set within ourselves. Let's go deeper on this point, but before we do, if you found value in this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Internal boundaries. Independent of other people, you have internal boundaries that you have established in your mind. They operate on both a conscious and unconscious level. These boundaries act as a guide, helping you navigate different situations and interactions with others, informed by the principles that define who you are and what you stand for. Internal boundaries are often formed during childhood. They're based on experiences and influences from things like family members, peers, your faith, and even society. These boundaries serve as a protective mechanism, helping you establish your sense of self and mold your personal values, beliefs, and morals. You have your own unique philosophy, created to govern and uphold the standards you live by. Violating these boundaries can stir up powerful emotions. You may even experience discomfort, guilt, or shame, feeling as though you've betrayed yourself. It could be you compromise on a belief or value for the sake of a selfish need. for example. Or maybe a fit of rage makes you act in a way that you regret and disapprove of. Wanting to be liked by a particular person or group could cause you to portray yourself in a way that goes against your own principles or makes you do something that deep down you don't agree with. Your internal boundaries are like a compass guiding your thoughts, feelings, and actions to align with your principles. Occasionally, these boundaries can be tested and even breached, often unexpectedly, causing a deep disconnection from your true, authentic self. This rupture happens when external influences are stronger than the voice within, when your emotional pain is too great, or when your need for approval or validation overrides your integrity. Ignoring your internal boundaries can be caused by a weakened sense of self, making it hard for you to create your own identity or even see your own self-worth. Not having a well-formed identity or being disconnected from your true, authentic self can lead to poor decision-making, unhealthy relationships, self-sabotaging behaviors, addictive habits, and toxic patterns that harm you and the others around you. And these behaviors are often coping mechanisms to manage emotional pain and a way to regain control. The danger is that instead of sticking to the boundaries you set for yourself, like limiting alcohol, avoiding toxic relationships, or managing your money wisely, you end up disregarding them, letting fleeting desires, impulses, or even the opinions of others override your commitment to yourself. In those moments, your emotions and insecurities take over, making it harder to stay true to your intentions. Internal boundaries are incredibly important. But what if some of them are no longer useful? What if they're holding you back, getting in your way, and keeping you from living a fuller, more meaningful life? Breaking boundaries. We've spoke about how you operate within the boundaries that you have established for yourself. Within these boundaries contain your internal psychological landscape. In other words, it is in the safety and confines of these boundaries that you navigate the world. But for you to evolve, adapt, and grow, you must inevitably venture beyond these boundaries. This is where breaking boundaries becomes a crucial aspect in personal development, pushing the limits of your internal limitations in a deliberate and conscious manner. Breaking boundaries can be immensely empowering and at the same time challenging, uncomfortable, and scary. But it can also bring about positive change and deep personal growth. When you break through limitations that are holding you back, you're creating new possibilities. You actively choose to go beyond your comfort zone. You challenge outdated beliefs and behaviors that no longer align with who you are and where you want to be. Boundaries in your developmental years were necessary to keep you safe and to develop a sense of self. But as you grow and evolve, some of those boundaries may no longer serve you. For example, you might want to learn a new skill, but as a way to keep you safe from embarrassment or pain, you may adopt the belief that you're too old or not smart enough or incapable. However, the wiser, more experienced, and more capable you has the resources to manage change, face uncertainty, overcome fear, and even failure. What's even more interesting is that some of your unconscious boundaries may not have even been established by you. For example, a parent's fear of driving could heighten their anxiety about their child getting into a car, potentially preventing them from getting a driving license. In the same way, a friend might discourage you from pursuing a music career due to their own fears of financial instability. These secondhand fears can restrict your goals and your growth, as they are barriers based on someone else's life narrative. Not breaking boundaries can be extremely restrictive because it limits your scope to explore, connect, and especially to create. Famous creatives are often celebrated for their boldness to dive into realms other people hesitated to enter. It's this courage to go further that births new ideas, perspectives, and artistic expressions. As with everything, boundaries have a dual nature. On one hand, they create a safe space to grow and explore. But on the other hand, a boundary can become limiting, hinder personal development, and the ability to adapt to new challenges. By assessing and adjusting your boundaries, you can ensure that they are helpful and not restrictive. allowing your boundaries not to only be protective, but crucially adaptive. Being aware of your own boundaries is one thing, but what if I told you that you could gain a deeper perspective into someone else's mind? Watch this video to find out more.